This is the second part on the Hot Rod's body texture, and what we'll be doing here, as I mentioned in the previous video, is we're going to add some dirt, grime, and other details to add believability to this texture. In the previous video I got all the basic colors down, and I'm pretty happy with how these look, so now it's up to some extra layers to be added to make this texture really realistic. So right now I'm going to start with the body paints. I added a new folder called Wear and Tear, and I created a new layer, and I'm just painting some grime in there. I just picked this really cloudy brush. It's another E3D brushes, and I'm painting some cloudy dirt all over the car. This is just dirt that has accumulated on the underside of the car, just the regular sort of darker discoloring you would see on the underside of a car. I'm combining a few brushes here. Right now I'm going for this more speckled dirt, and really this isn't really difficult, I mean, because unlike the previous textures I'm working with some pretty wide and pretty big UV islands here, so it's pretty quick to just put down a new layer of details. So just using this brush, splattering some on, making sure that my flow isn't too high. I just created a layer which I called grime. Now I'm creating a layer called dust, and this will be a lighter color. As you can see, I'm switching to this beige color here, and this is not going to be some cloudy stuff that I'm going to be painting on it. It's more going to be like a stamp of dust that I'll be laying on top of this car. This is one of my favorite brushes for that. It looks like if you put it down the right color with the right opacity, it looks exactly like a dusty layer is on top of the car, with like dust that was in dirty water that has dried onto the car. So this I'm splashing everywhere. I'm not only putting it on the sides, I'm also putting it on the top of the car. Well, there's not much top to it, but just simply putting it everywhere. Erasing it slightly because I think it's a little bit too strong. Like I mentioned several times before, you can see me in the process here of adding several layers of dirt to a car. You really have to think about how it's built up in real life and apply it in the same way. So just erasing a little bit, making sure it's subtle enough. And time for a new layer. And this I'm going to completely color it gray, and I'm going to add a sponge filter on top of it. I've talked about this before. Sponge filter really is a really cool filter that you can use to add some generic surface detail onto something. Now rendering clouds on that, and then using edit fade filter to fade these clouds down. And just the whole point of me doing this is I'm adding this layer so that I can use a mask on it together with my custom scratch brush to paint scratches in the paint. So I'm actually, just like I'm erasing the paint, I'm doing the opposite. I'm making the metal layer appear by painting small scratches, dents, dings, and scoring in the paint. And important here is that I do this on the edges of the body and on places where there will be scoring from dirt and rocks that are kicked up by the wheels and hit the body of the car. So this is mostly because it breaks up the paint, and also I think it's believable, because if you have a car that's this dirty and that has seen this much wear, then you're bound to have some loss of paint in certain areas. So I'm really looking for the corners here, and then just doing this random squiggling, scratching to make it look like the paint's been worn off. This will be used in the specular also. It'll have a much higher specular than the paint, so that'll stand out a lot. Well, we'll see about the higher specular. It depends on how I want the car paint to look exactly, but you definitely got to make a difference between the paint and the scratched area with your specular. And also note that these stretched scratches, I'm drawing them in the direction that rocks would fly when they hit the body. So I'm saving this and having a look at it, and that looks okay. It's not too bad, especially here at the front at those round parts. I think it looks really believable. Got to keep in mind here, the way you paint these it really makes a big difference. I've done this so many times before, so I know how big my dings and scratches should be, what direction. You got to get a little bit of a feel for this, and a reference can help. I'm not using reference because I'm really used to doing this, but in your case it might. Okay, so having a look at this, just having a look at the front and everything. Sometimes I can't help myself, I just like the look of it and I start looking all over the car again. Okay, back to Photoshop. We might have to create a new layer here. Yeah, it's going to be an adjustment layer. What this layer exactly is this is going to be where the paint is faded and worn from the sun, where it's got a little bit thinner, lost its color, lost its saturation. So I first apply that layer with a mask that's completely white, then I turn that mask black, and then I pick a brush and start painting in the faded areas. This is just to lose the uniform color of the paint. Some areas will just have lost a little bit of their color. That's a bit too much. Key here is being subtle. This really has to be subtle. It doesn't make that much of a difference, but once again, a lot of small steps can make one big difference. I'm really looking for the right brush here. I want to get some more variation in there. This one I like, but it's got to be a little bit more subtle. There we go. I see that these front end details, I've got to move them around a little bit. Okay, so I'm just going to continue here with some of this wear on the paint. You can see it's starting to look okay, like the paint really has lost a bit of its shine and making it a bit more subtle though. Since I don't want the car to look too worn, it's got to look used, but still like it looks good. Okay, so I'm basically just selecting everything, rotating it to have a look at the other side since the lights don't illuminate everything. I've already made a specific light setup here. I'm just going to keep using that. That's as a part of my workflow that I always do, like create the lighting before I'm even finished with the car. Or the object or whatever. Alright, so right now I want to look for some reference on worn leather seats. I think the body is okay. I don't have to do that much more on it. It looks pretty good. And I want to get some reference on worn leather seats. So I'm just going to save this image. Worn leather from a car. Even one good reference image can help me a lot. Not really finding anything, just looking for worn leather. I'm pretty sure I'll find something that's pretty useful. Nope. This one's pretty good. You can definitely do something with that. This isn't very good. It's not worn enough. So I'm just going to have a look at CG Textures if they have something that I can use. That one looks pretty good. That one as well. And that one looks okay too. Not too sure though. Yeah, so I've opened 2 here, which I think are going to be pretty good. 3 actually. This one's really nice. I can definitely use this one as a reference. I'm not going to use it as a direct texture because it can't be applied to my seat. So I'm just thinking there's lots of discolorations and there's these scratches on the material that are really obvious. And that's what I want to get into my leather as well. Just dumping that one in here. changing my music a little bit. I listened to Iron Maiden in too. I forgot them in my previous playlist. So these can definitely serve as reference. Okay, so to the leather. Plenty of discolorations in there, and what's really notable are these lighter cracks. Leather wear, another layer for me to work with. Create a new layer in there, and I'm actually going to make it a little bit more saturated and darker before I start, so that I have more room to work with to make these lighter cracks, because if my base color is too light, it's going to be tough to get those cracks in there believably. I definitely want to stay away from making things too light, and or even going towards white. Even that's not a good idea. Okay. So I'm picking the colors here just so that I can see. There we go. So what I'm doing here is doing the same as the worn paint, as the chip paint. I'm creating a layer here with a color I picked from a picture, and I'm going to use this layer as a mask for all these scratches. So I really got to look for the right brush now. I mean, this brush has got to really look like cracks and scratches. It's important to get this right. That looks okay. It looks like the leather got scratched. So now I'm going over the areas that will probably be more worn than others. Just lightly, not too much. Creating a general surface with this sort of color. And then now, just manually with a 1-pixel brush, I'm going to draw my own cracks in, because I'm never going to be able to get them sharp enough with these stamp brushes, so it's better to just draw them myself. I'm not going to overdo it. There are just a few areas here and there that are pretty damaged, that have more cracks than others, and I'm just manually painting these in. They're not too different from scratches. The difference is that they're a little bit more clumped in shape. They're not such like stretched straight lines. Alright, let's see what more I can do. I'm just gonna go for another brush. I'm looking for the right one. That really looks like, yeah, that's okay. Turn it 90 degrees and just stamp it over again. And I'm just going to do the same thing here. There we go. Alright. This leather, you got to remember, it's the car doesn't have a roof or anything, so it's definitely going to be worn. I'm going to add some discoloration maybe later. I'll see about that. I'm liking where this is going. It's really coming across as leather. Specular might be a key here too. So I'm looking if I see anything more that I should do. Go for the 1-pixel brush, and with an even lighter color, I'm going to draw some more details on there. Almost white, but the flow's only at 35. Some really obvious scratches here. Like somebody sat down with a battle axe in his hand in the car and scratched the leather. Definitely a worn look. So just subtly going over. If it's not subtle enough, I just hit Control Z to undo my previous action. And yeah, it's looking pretty good. That's the carpet of the car, the bottom. And you can't really see that, it's really dark. I just want to add some some splotches there, like whatever, somebody spilled his drink in the car or whatever. Or just some generic grime, I'll see about that. It doesn't really matter, I just want to get rid of the solid color look. Okay, some generic splashes here. Yeah, some color difference, that's really helping too. Erasing some of those leather highlights on the carpet since it's a bit too obvious. Okay, as for the leather, I think it's starting to look pretty good. Don't know if we need to do much more. Look at doors, at wood, to see if I can find anything interesting here, because we're probably going to go back to the wood for the dashboard right now. As it stands, I'm not completely happy with how the dashboard looks. As I said, there has to be discoloration, so I talked about this before. I'm looking for some reference images, but it's very specific what I'm looking for. Wooden dashboard, see if I find anything like that. But it's turning out not to be very successful. So, might just have to do this myself. As you can see, the wood loses saturation, it gets a little bit lighter, so that's what I gotta try and mimic here. So I'm gonna create a new hue saturation layer, which is a lot lighter, a lot less saturated, and just gonna turn it completely white, and then take out my brush and start painting on that mask. Looking for the right brush here. That's nothing all too great either. Yeah, this one looks okay. So the top will be a lot more worn than the bottom, the areas where the sunlight falls. This is like, I'm combining both sunlight wear and wear from touching it. Look at that, that's quite believable if you ask me. And some smaller diameter over it. And yeah, this is starting to look okay. I'm turning up the opacity, and with a smaller brush I'm doing some slight scratches. Like the varnish got scratched and then it definitely changes color faster. Okay, a grime layer for the wood. Need some of that as well. This should be really subtle since I don't think there will be that much dirt on the dashboard. Just for some color variation. So it's starting to get a little bit dark here. You'll see, reduce the opacity, there we go. Okay, and then back to the scratches, just gonna add some more. These are subtle at a 13% flow, or 15, I can't really tell in this video, but the dashboard is looking okay like this. Alright, so one thing I haven't done yet is the gator for the shift lever, and I don't think I've even baked in the occlusion for that yet, so I'm just going to quickly do that with V-Ray. There we go, that didn't take long, and I'm just going to dump that. Yeah, and as it happens, this ends up in the wrong folder all the time due to some bug in Max. There we go. Duplicate it to the correct layer. Merge everything down to bring things in order. And then changing things back to their old blending modes and opacities once I've merged the layers. It's a bit annoying to work like that, but not much I can do about it. I'm going to use the alpha as a mask for the leather as well. It's going to go into the leather layer. It's still not showing up yet. And it looks okay in that one layer. I'm just wondering if it's visible. Oh, there we go. It wasn't visible in the hue and saturation layers. It's quite dark. So I think I'm going to add some of that scratching to the leather. It's not all that visible. And then just save it again. And apply the right texture, and that looks okay. I mean, I don't need to put too much more effort in there. It's a dark area, you won't see it that much. Okay. So it looks like the majority of the textures is done. I still got specular reflection, glossiness, that sort of stuff to do, but the diffuse, maybe a few tweaks here and there, but I'm starting to get there. Okay, like I said, diffuse should be good, so I'm going to duplicate diffuse, rename it to specular, and we're going to start working these to turn this into a specular map. Decals, of course, are not visible in diffuse since the tone of the body, the specular tone, should be the same all over. There's no difference in specular values if there's a different color in the paint. At least not in what I'm doing here. I mean, some sort of stickers and vinyls might do that, but I decided not to. So, yeah, just desaturating, adjusting brightness, contrast, same deal all over. And I'm definitely making sure that the dirt on the body is visible enough. I'm duplicating the grime, duplicating the dust a little bit. You've seen me do this before, it's not too hard anymore now, right? Okay, once that's done, I can move on to the seat leather. And this is going to be a bit tricky to get right in terms of specular, because I really want it to feel like leather. I think it should have enough specular, but it also should have a lot of contrast. And the body should be completely white. Of course, I need to remove this color layer with the hue saturation. And actually, I was thinking that for the leather, I might have to do what you do with skin, like a 180-degree hue shift, which is, and this is a bit complicated. I haven't done this before in the car because you only do this for organic materials. But if you look at the specular of skin, and what I'm doing right now isn't too complicated, so you should be able to follow that. What you do for the color of skin is, because you want a pure white specular, is you take the diffuse color and invert it, and then use that as a specular. And since the specular value gets added to the diffuse value, this means that instead of a specular value that's slightly tinted with your diffuse color, you get a pure white specular value. So that's what I'm going to plan on doing here. As for right now, I'm just changing the contrast a little bit on all these parts. I want some obvious contrast on the wood. Change my layers around a little bit so you can get enough contrast. Okay. So right now I've got a black and white version. You're gonna have a look, but the color trick I talked about early just now, we're gonna do that right away. Yeah, one thing I can't forget is the front end details. Definitely want to make them pop, so I gotta do a few tricks here. The stroke color around the edges, Has to be more obvious. Okay, let's just save this one. And I decided that I might want to show these in the specular after all, because it's probably gonna look a little bit better. So I'm just gonna do that. A slightly like yellow orange tinted specular will look way better. Seat leather not really working yet. It looks too plasticky. Gotta change that. The body in terms of specular, that's okay, but the leather, not working yet. So gotta get back to that. And I said it was gonna be a little bit tougher than the rest, so gotta continue working on this. The scratches, they definitely gotta be a lot more dull in terms of specular. So just duplicating that layer a few times. And the extra ambient occlusion layer I created also. I'm just going to tone those on the body down a little bit. Okay, just slightly tweaking things. And let's have a look. It's better already, but might still be a little bit strong. Also, just a slight remark here. Glossiness map is going to make a difference on the leather of the seat, so we should keep that in mind slightly. So now that I have my specular at an okay level, but it's a bit hard to judge since I need my gloss first. I'm actually creating the gloss, and I'll then continue on the specular a little bit more later on. So as I said, big flat values. I'm using like real solid colors here. Nothing too complicated. I think this should work. I've got to use a few layers here to make the gloss more interesting. Like the faded worn wood, it's going to be a lot more dull in terms of it's going to have wider speculars than the more varnished wood. So obviously I got to add that into my gloss. The leather, of course, that's going to have in the cracks like close to no specular, but if there is some, it's got to be really dull. And some of these splotches. Don't worry that this texture doesn't look good by itself. I mean, its purpose is in conjunction with other textures, so got to keep that in mind. Okay, so changing the glossiness level around a bit. The leather is better already, but it's still not convincing me all that much. The dashboard is pretty good, but the leather, God, it's still looking like copper, or I'm not liking it. It's too metally. So gotta get back to that. I'm inverting that. I'm just going to use that on my specular for my leather. There we go. Now we have this slight blue tint in the diffuse, in the specular, which is actually the invert of the diffuse. I just took the layer, inverted it, and then dropped it in the correct place. And I do think that is looking better. It looks a lot less like metal, since you don't get, especially here, you don't get those colored, slightly colored highlights in there. Duplicating the extra AO even more, very important. That's also better, brings out the seats more. So you see, using ambient occlusion in your specular map can definitely help pop the details out more. Alright, so it's time to create a reflect map, and obviously I want the body to reflect, The dashboard maybe slightly, but the leather, of course, no reflections at all. So this shouldn't be too hard. It's like the glossiness map, just a little bit easier with a few layers from the specular map. It's sort of in between glossiness and specular. Alright, so I'm just taking these details, dropping them into reflect. Of course, the holes in the front end, the firewall of the car, you don't want those to reflect at all, so they have to be completely pitch black. Body paint in my reflect. Just keeping things organized, because as you can see, it's a complete layer fest here, and I have to keep things under control and make things clear for me. As also, I'm working at a reduced resolution with these videos, so it's always fighting for screen space then. Okay, so the reflect map is done. Instead of ambient occlusion, I can start using my reflect map, turning on Fresnel reflections, but of course with the default type you can't really see that well, so maybe I just gotta activate a cube map. It's looking okay already. I think a cube map is going to look better though. Oh, look at that. It's really bringing out all those details. Alright, it's not that long anymore in this video. We're almost at the end. There's still a slight tweaks video after this, but not too much left here to do. Of course, ambient occlusion, I can't forget that. And all in all, this is looking pretty good. So definitely hope you learned something from this video. I think I did a few interesting tricks here, which should help you if you texture this sort of stuff, or even if you're just texturing leather, or want to keep something like looking sort of clean, but still not too clean, which I think I struck the right balance here with the body. I mean, it looks worn, but it doesn't look like it's gone through hell and back. Alright, with this cube map, things are definitely looking better. I absolutely love how this car paint is looking here. Feels like you can almost touch it. Okay, so that's it for this video, and see you in the latest tweaks video.